Bullies mock her natural hair. She comes back as an international model. Amara Baptiste walked through the hallways of Westfield High School with her head down, her thick, coily hair pulled back into a simple ponytail, secured with an old rubber band she'd found in her backpack that morning. At 17, she had learned that invisibility was her best defense against the cruelty that seemed to follow her everywhere, like a persistent shadow. Her dark brown skin glowed with natural radiance that caught the fluorescent lighting just right, and her features held an elegant symmetry that would have been striking if anyone bothered to look past the surface judgments they had already made. About the quiet girl from Haiti. The daughter of hard-working immigrants, Amara had moved to this predominantly white suburban school district 2 years ago when her father got a promotion at the engineering firm where he'd worked nights and weekends for the past decade. Her parents, Marie and Joseph Baptiste, worked double shifts to afford the modest house in this better neighborhood, believing that education would open doors for their daughter that had been slammed shut for them. They had no idea those same doors would slam shut the moment she walked through them on her first day, marked as different by everything from her accent to her hair texture to the careful way she pronounced English words. "Look, it's Brillo pad," sneered Madison Crawford. As Amara passed her locker, the words cutting through the morning chatter like a knife. Madison, with her platinum blonde extensions that cost more than Amara's family spent on groceries in a month and designer clothes that bore labels Amara had only seen in magazines, had appointed herself the unofficial queen of junior year from the moment she'd transferred from private school. Her followers, Jessica Martinez and Brittany Thompson, giggled on cue like trained seals, their laughter sharp and artificial. Amara kept walking, her fingers unconsciously touching her hair where it curled against her neck. She had spent countless mornings in middle school straightening it with chemical relaxers until her scalp burned and bled, trying desperately to fit in with classmates who saw her natural texture as something to be fixed, corrected, or hidden. When she finally decided to embrace her natural hair after watching her mother cry over the damage the chemicals had done, the comments only got worse, more pointed, more personal. "Just ignore them," she told herself, the same mantra she repeated every day like a prayer. "They don't matter. Their words don't define you." But even as she repeated the words, she felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the way her shoulders automatically hunched forward, as if she could make herself smaller, less noticeable, less of a target. But, deep down, buried beneath layers of self-doubt and daily humiliation, Amara carried a secret that even she barely acknowledged. 3 months ago, while walking downtown with her mother after a doctor's appointment, a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and an expensive coat had approached them outside a trendy coffee shop near the Arts District. "Excuse me," the woman had said, extending a crisp business card with gold lettering. "I'm Elena Rodriguez from Apex Modeling Agency. Has your daughter ever considered modeling? She has exactly the look we're seeking for several upcoming campaigns." Amara's mother had politely declined, explaining in her careful English that they were focused on academics and Amara didn't have time for such distractions. But Elena had been persistent, pressing her card into Marie's hand and asking them to think about it, to call her if they changed their minds. The card still sat in Amara's desk drawer, tucked between her chemistry textbook and a photo of her grandmother, untouched but not forgotten, like a secret doorway she wasn't brave enough to open. The cafeteria at lunch was a carefully orchestrated minefield of social hierarchies that Amara had learned to navigate with the precision of a soldier crossing enemy territory. She usually sat alone near the windows that overlooked the parking lot, eating the lunch her mother packed with love and worry, rice and beans, plantains, sometimes a piece of griot if they had leftovers from Sunday dinner. Today was no different, except Madison and her crew seemed particularly energized, their voices carrying across the cafeteria with the confidence of people who had never been made to feel small. "I heard they're doing school photos next week," Jessica announced loudly enough for half the cafeteria to hear, her voice saccharine with false concern. "I wonder if they make special accommodations for certain hair types that might not photograph well." Brittany fake whispered back, loud enough to carry, but soft enough to maintain plausible deniability. "Maybe they'll need to bring in industrial-strength gel, or a professional." "Tama?" The comments hit their mark with surgical precision. Amara felt her cheeks burn with humiliation as several nearby tables turned to look, some faces showing curiosity, others displaying the uncomfortable expression of people who knew they were witnessing cruelty but lacked the courage to intervene. She tried to focus on her sandwich, but the words echoed in her mind like a broken record. Industrial strength gel, professional tamer. The worst part wasn't the words themselves, she'd heard worse, but the way they made her feel about something she was finally learning to love about herself. Her hair, which her grandmother had called her crown, which her mother braided with such care on special occasions, which had taken years of chemical damage to finally accept and embrace. After lunch, things escalated in the hallway near the science wing. As Amara rushed to her next class, trying to avoid eye contact with the clusters of students who seemed to part around her like she carried some contagious disease, Madison deliberately bumped into her, sending her books scattering across the polished linoleum floor like fallen leaves. While Amara knelt to collect them, her hair falling forward to shield her burning face, Madison stood over her with the casual cruelty of someone who had never experienced powerlessness. "Oops," Madison said with false sweetness that dripped like honey laced with poison. "Maybe if you could see through all that hair, you'd watch where you're going. Have you ever considered a haircut? I know a great salon that specializes in challenging cases." Other students stopped to watch, some recording with their phones while pretending to text, others simply standing in a loose circle like spectators at an accident. No one helped. No one said anything. The silence felt heavier than the laughter would have. "This is it," Amara thought, gathering her books with trembling hands while fighting back tears that threatened to betray her vulnerability. "This is my life. This is all it will ever be." The breaking point came 2 weeks later during gym class, in the suffocating atmosphere of the gymnasium that always smelled like sweat and floor wax and teenage desperation. Coach Williams had assigned partners for a volleyball unit, and as usual, Amara was picked last, standing alone as team captains surveyed the remaining options with the resignation of people forced to choose from scraps. She found herself partnered with Sarah Kim, a quiet girl who seemed as uncomfortable with the social dynamics as she was. During the game, Madison positioned herself strategically across the net, her smile sharp and predatory. When the ball came to her, instead of setting up her teammates or playing the game properly, she served it directly at Amara's head with the accuracy of someone who had planned this moment carefully. The ball struck Amara hard enough to send her stumbling backward, her carefully secured ponytail loosening and sending her hair tumbling around her shoulders in its full natural glory, a cascade of coils and curls that caught the gymnasium lights and seemed to take on a life of its own. "Timber!" Madison shouted with theatrical glee, causing the entire gym to erupt in laughter that echoed off the walls and seemed to multiply until it filled every corner of the space. But as Amara knelt on the cold gymnasium floor, gathering her fallen hair tie while dozens of eyes stared down at her, something shifted inside her like a tectonic plate, finding a new position. She looked up at the faces surrounding her, some laughing with genuine cruelty, others giggling nervously because they didn't know what else to do, many looking away in embarrassment, all of them complicit in her humiliation through action or inaction. The laughter continued, but underneath it Amara heard something else, the sound of her own heartbeat, steady and strong, reminding her that she was still here, still breathing, still alive despite their attempts to erase her. Enough. The word came from somewhere deep inside her, from a place that remembered her grandmother's stories about strength, about dignity, about refusing to let others dim your light. She stood up slowly, her hair still loose around her shoulders, and for the first time in 2 years she looked directly at Madison Crawford. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice carrying in the sudden silence that had fallen over the gymnasium. Madison blinked, clearly expecting tears or anger or some other reaction she could use to fuel her cruelty. "What?" "Thank you for reminding me who I am," Amara said, gathering her hair and twisting it into a bun without the aid of a mirror, her movements graceful and deliberate. "I almost forgot for a minute." That afternoon, Amara did something she had never done before. She took Elena Rodriguez's business card from her desk drawer, holding it up to the light that streamed through her bedroom window, and dialed the number with fingers that shook only slightly. "Apex Modeling Agency," a pleasant voice answered. "This is Maria. How can I help you? Is Elena Rodriguez available? This is Amara Baptiste. She gave me her card a few months ago and asked me to call." Elena remembered her immediately. "Amara, I was hoping I'd hear from you. I'm so glad you called. Are you ready to talk about your future?" They met the following Saturday at a downtown studio that occupied the entire 3rd floor of a converted warehouse. The space was filled with natural light from enormous windows, and the walls were covered with photographs of women who looked nothing like the traditional models Amara had seen in magazines. Women with natural hair, with scars, with features that spoke of heritage and history rather than homogenized perfection. Elena took one look at Amara as she walked through the door, and her eyes lit up with the excitement of someone who had found exactly what they'd been searching. "Forrester, you have exactly what we've been looking for," she said, studying Amara's face from different angles, her hands gentle as she turned Amara's chin toward the light. "Natural beauty, striking bone structure, and that hair." She paused, running her fingers through Amara's coils with the reverence of someone who understood their worth. "It's absolutely stunning. The industry is finally waking up to real beauty, not just the manufactured kind that's been forced on us for decades." Elena explained that a major cosmetics company was launching a campaign celebrating natural hair textures and was looking for fresh faces to represent their new line. "You'd be perfect for this campaign, but I need to know, are you ready to work? This isn't just about taking pretty pictures. It's about changing how people see beauty, challenging every assumption they've ever made about what's considered attractive or desirable." For the next month, Amara lived a carefully balanced double life that required the organizational skills of a spy. At school, she endured the same daily humiliations while secretly working with Eleanor after classes and on weekends, learning about posing, lighting, and most importantly, about confidence. Eleanor brought in a photographer named Marcus Williams, a tall black man with locks who specialized in capturing natural beauty and had worked with some of the biggest names in the industry. "Your hair is your crown," Marcus told her during their first shoot, adjusting the lights to catch the way her coils captured and reflected illumination. "Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Every curl, every coil, every strand tells the story of your heritage, your strength, your beauty. That's not something to hide. That's something to celebrate." The photo shoots were unlike anything Amara had ever experienced. Instead of trying to make her look like someone else, Marcus and Elena worked to bring out what was already there, teaching her to move with confidence, to look directly into the camera lens without flinching, to embrace the very features that had made her a target at school. Slowly, something began to change in Amara that went beyond just her posture or the way she moved through space. Something deeper was shifting, like a flower finally getting enough sunlight to bloom. She started to see herself through different eyes, not as the girl who was too different, too foreign, too much, but as someone whose difference was actually her strength, her gift, her superpower. At school, people began to notice subtle changes that they couldn't quite name but definitely felt. Amara walked a little taller, her spine straighter, her head held higher. She made eye contact more often, no longer automatically looking away when someone's gaze met hers. When Madison made her usual comments, Amara didn't shrink away quite as much, didn't hunch her shoulders or try to make herself smaller. "Something's different about her," Jessica observed one day as they watched Amara walk past their usual spot, by the lockers, her movement more fluid and confident than before. "She probably got some kind of makeover," Madison replied dismissively, but her voice carried a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. Like that would help someone like her. But even Madison seemed less certain than before, as if she sensed that the power dynamic she had carefully constructed was beginning to shift in ways she couldn't control or understand. The campaign launched on a Tuesday morning in October, appearing simultaneously across multiple platforms: billboards, magazines, television commercials, and social media. Amara had no idea how quickly news traveled in the age of instant communication until her phone started buzzing during first-period geometry, notifications piling up faster than she could read them. By lunch, someone had posted screenshots of the advertisement on Instagram, and the image had begun to spread through the school's social networks like wildfire. It featured Amara's face in stunning close-up, her natural hair forming a magnificent halo around her head that seemed to glow with its own inner light. The tagline read, "Beauty, unfiltered, embrace your natural." The cafeteria fell unusually quiet as Amara walked to her usual table, conversations stopping mid-sentence as heads turned to follow her progress. Every eye was on her, but for the first time in 2 years it wasn't because of mockery or cruelty, it was because of recognition, amazement, and something that looked almost like respect. Madison stood frozen by her locker, staring at her phone, screen in disbelief while her friends clustered around her, their voices rising in excitement and confusion. That's her," Brittany whispered, looking between the image on the screen and Amara herself, as if she couldn't quite reconcile the confident model in the advertisement with the quiet girl they had tormented. "That can't be the same person," Jessica said, but her voice lacked conviction, and she kept glancing toward Amara's table as if seeing her for the first time. Word spread through the school like wildfire, carried by whispers and text messages and social media shares. By the end of the day, Amara found herself surrounded by students who had never spoken to her before, all wanting to know how she had become a model, how long she had been hiding this secret, whether she remembered them from class. "I saw your ad during my mum's show last night," said Trevor Morrison, a popular senior who had never acknowledged her existence and had once laughed when Madison called her Cousin It. "You look amazing. I had no idea you were a model." Sarah Kim, her former volleyball partner, approached her after last period with tears in her eyes. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion, "for not speaking up before, for not helping when I should have. You didn't deserve any of that, and I was a coward for not saying anything." The real confrontation came the next morning, when Madison cornered Amara by her locker in the hallway near the main office. Her usual confident demeanor had been replaced by something that looked almost like desperation, her perfectly applied makeup unable to hide the uncertainty in her eyes. "So you think you're some kind of celebrity now?" Madison asked, but the bite was gone from her voice, replaced by something that sounded almost like pleading. Amara turned to face her, and for the first time in 2 years, she looked Madison directly in the eyes without flinching, without looking away, without apologizing for taking up space. "No," Amara said calmly, her voice steady and clear. "I think I'm exactly who I've always been. You just finally decided to notice." Madison's face flushed red, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "This doesn't change anything. You're still the same weird girl with crazy hair who doesn't belong here." "You're right," Amara replied, running her fingers through her coils with newfound pride, letting them spring back into place like living things. "My hair is exactly the same, so what does that say about you?" The question hung in the air between them like a challenge, and Madison opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, seemingly at a loss for words for the first time since Amara had known her. Other students had gathered to watch, forming a loose circle around them, but this time Amara wasn't the one being humiliated. The power had shifted, and everyone could feel it. "For 2 years you've made fun of the same hair that's now in a national advertising campaign," Amara continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "The same features that a major company thinks are beautiful enough to represent their brand. Maybe the problem was never my hair. Maybe the problem was your inability to see beauty that doesn't look exactly like you." Madison's followers had gone silent, suddenly finding their shoes very interesting as they realized their leader was losing a battle she had always won before. "You made me feel invisible," Amara said, addressing not just Madison, but the entire crowd that had gathered. "You made me hate the way I looked, made me want to change everything about myself to fit into your narrow definition of acceptable. But you know what? I'm grateful." The statement surprised everyone, including Amara herself, but as the words left her mouth, she realized they were true. "I'm grateful because you taught me that other people's opinions about my appearance have nothing to do with my worth. You taught me that confidence can't be borrowed or stolen. It has to come from within. You taught me that being different isn't something to apologize for, it's something to celebrate." Madison's eyes filled with tears, though whether from anger or shame or something else entirely, no one could tell. "I'm sorry," she whispered, so quietly that only Amara could hear. Amara studied her face for a moment, seeing something she had never noticed before: insecurity, fear, the same feelings she had carried for so long hidden beneath layers of cruelty and manufactured confidence. "I accept your apology," Amara said, "but apologizing to me isn't enough. You need to apologize to yourself for spending so much energy hating something beautiful, for trying to tear down someone else to make yourself feel bigger." The crowd began to disperse slowly, conversations resuming in hushed tones as students processed what they had just witnessed. Madison stood alone by the lockers, looking smaller somehow, as if the armor of her cruelty had been stripped away to reveal the frightened girl underneath. In the weeks that followed, everything changed, in ways that went far beyond Amara's newfound fame. The cosmetics campaign was so successful that she was invited to participate in New York Fashion Week, walking for designers who celebrated natural beauty and diversity, her image appearing in magazines and on websites around the world. At school, Amara became something she had never expected to be: popular, but not in the way Madison had been. Students sought her out, not because they feared her, but because they respected her, because her story had inspired them to embrace their own differences. She used her growing platform to start a club promoting self-acceptance and natural beauty, creating a safe space for students who had been marginalized for being different. Madison never returned to her former level of social dominance. Without her primary target, her cruel comments seemed to lose their power, and her followers began to drift away as they realized that building others up felt better than tearing them down. She eventually approached Amara one more time, months later, after a particularly difficult day when her parents had announced their divorce. "I've been thinking about what you said," Madison admitted, her voice small and uncertain, "about apologizing to myself. I think I was jealous. Your hair, your confidence, even when I was tearing you down. There was something about you that I wanted, but didn't know how to get." Amara smiled, a genuine expression of forgiveness that seemed to light up her entire face. Confidence isn't about having perfect hair or perfect anything. It's about accepting who you are and knowing that's enough, even when the world tells you it isn't. Madison nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Can you teach me that? Can you teach me how to like myself?" The question surprised Amara, but she realized that perhaps the greatest victory wasn't in defeating her bully, but in helping her heal, in breaking the cycle of hurt that had made Madison cruel in the first place. "We can learn together," Amara said, extending her hand. "But you have to want to change, really want it, not just because you got caught or because it's not working anymore." As senior year progressed, Amara continued modeling while maintaining her grades and her commitment to helping other students find their own confidence. She had found her voice and her power, not through revenge or cruelty, but through self-acceptance and grace, through the revolutionary act of loving herself exactly as she was. Standing at graduation, looking out at her classmates as she prepared to deliver the valedictorian speech, Amara reflected on her journey from invisible target to confident young woman. The girl who had once hidden in corners now stood confidently at the podium, her natural hair crowned with flowers, speaking about the importance of embracing differences and refusing to let others define your worth. "They thought my hair made me less than," she thought, looking out at the audience of families and friends who had come to celebrate this milestone. "They never imagined it would make me everything I was meant to be." In the crowd, Madison sat with her family, clapping